Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, talking about Chucktober Day 12, this time on Chucky Season 1, Episode 5, Little Little Lies, which aired November 9th, 2021. This one was directed by Leslie Libman, and it was written by Harley Payton and Rachel Paradise or Paradise. I'm not really sure. Have talked about Harley's writing credits before, but I think this is the first instance of Rachel. So let's see Rachel's credits, or at least some of them. So, writer on an episode of the Hawaii Five-O TV show from the 2010s. Story by credit on A Friend of the Family, a TV miniseries from 2022. Uh, Showrunner's assistant and writer's production assistant on 25 episodes of Psych. Imagine seeing Chucky go up against Sean Spencer and Gus from Psych. That would be quite something right there. Burton Guster. I was trying to remember his full name. And has also done script coordinating on 13 episodes of the Rush Hour TV show, 48 episodes of the aforementioned Hawaii Five-O show, 8 episodes of Deadly Class, and 1 episode of United We Fall, and 8 episodes of Brand New Cherry Flavor. So, yeah, those are Rachel's credits right there. This episode begins with it begins with a flashback, and the flashback sequences continue throughout the episode. But it's the 1980s, and we see Charles Lee Ray at this club with 80s music playing, and looks very much like Charles Lee Ray, how we see him in the beginning of the original Child's Play. They don't really specify which year in the 80s this is. I kind of wonder if maybe they felt like they didn't have the timeline very concrete. I mean, we see from articles in Curse of Chucky that the Lakeshore Stranglers murders are known as far back as 1984, so I don't know why they didn't just throw in that year, or if they thought, well, we might specify something later, so keep it sort of fluid for now, just in case. It's yeah, so but I guess it doesn't really matter which year this happens. Charles Lee Ray notices a woman at the club who is getting a bit violent with some guy she's with, slapping him and stuff. He goes up to her, and I feel like at first you're expected to think that, okay, this is Tiffany, and I think this character is blonde, but then later on, they look at another woman in the club whom they decide should join in on the fun. And when I first watched this, I was like, oh, is it going to turn out that she's Tiffany? The different hair color than we're used to for Tiffany. But uh, yeah, so when they end up all three of them together in a room, I think this is at the Hackensack Hotel. Uh, they end up, you know, Charles Lee Ray um, looks like he's gonna stab the newcomer, the second girl, and she's like, "Do it, go ahead." And so that makes him attracted to her. And while the first woman he got involved in this whole thing is freaked out by this, and they go after her and end her. So she's dead, and um, the one, the second girl starts talking like Tiffany. It's Jennifer Tilly's voice now, and she says her name is Tiffany, and he says his name is Charles. She says that he should be called Chucky, and so I guess that's the origin of the Chucky nickname, as goofy as it may be. And so, yeah, that's the beginning of the Chucky and Tiffany relationship. I remember when this aired, there were viewers who were confused slash mad that the first woman wasn't the one who turned out to be Tiffany, but it's like the show, well, the show intended for you to believe that. Why are you so mad about that? Um, and I think the actress that they got here for this younger Tiffany, the 1980s Tiffany, I think they got a good choice. A while ago there was I remember, scrolling through the Chucky Facebook groups and someone had posted a screenshot from Bride of Chucky. And I was like, oh, is that the actress who plays her in the Chucky TV show, the younger version? And it's like, oh, no, that's Tiffany in Bride of Chucky. And so I feel like they did good casting here. And speaking of casting, the person playing Charles Lee Ray in these 1980s sequences, I at first, when I first watched this episode, I thought maybe it was the same actor who played the teenage Charles Lee Ray, and they just made him look like more like Brad Dourif. And when he takes off the sunglasses, it's like, oh, that really does look like Brad Dourif there. But then I found out later on, oh, it's his daughter Fiona Dourif, Nika herself. He put makeup and stuff on her and made the hair look like her dad. And yeah, they just, back in Cult of Chucky, when she walks out of the mental institution, there was that striking similarity to her dad. So they must have picked up on that and thought, oh, we could have her do this, like play the younger version of her dad in these 80s sequences. And I think it works so well and it's so good. Um, but yeah, I could see how the dialogue might seem kind of goofy though, changing the voice to Jennifer Tilly's voice, and so it's obviously ADR'd. There might be a couple lines from this young Charles E. Ray where it feels obvious that an older Brad Dourif is they're putting his voice over it, or it feels exaggerated. Especially when he says "You want to smoke," and it feels like it's sort of an exaggerated Chucky voice in a way. I can't really explain it. And the whole "I think you should be Chucky," like yeah, that's kind of goofy, but it's whatever. I thought it was fine overall. But in the present, at the hospital, Caroline wakes up and her dad gives her the Chucky doll with the half melted face, and she really dislikes it now. Like, even though she'd been saying, I want Chucky, I want Chucky. But she screams when she sees the face, and then her dad just like throws it in the garbage. And so Chucky falls down the garbage chute and ends up in a dumpster that has all these syringes that somehow get stuck in him, and so he's injected with some stuff and getting high, I guess. And he's like, I love hospitals. And the Chucky title card is made up of hearts, both the heart symbol and like actual like CGI renditions of human hearts. So this feels like it could be kind of a Valentine's Day episode. Like, imagine if they had split season one in half and then came back around Valentine's Day in February. That would have been that would have sucked. Like having to wait that long, and season three they split, and that was a whole thing. But yeah, this everyone goes home. Uh, Caroline ends up with a new good guy doll called Tommy. And oh, the trio, Devin, Lexi, and Jake, they had searched the dumpster after Lexi's dad mentioned throwing Chucky away, and they didn't find Chucky there. And there's also some friction between Lexi's parents. Her mom, who's like the mayor or whatever, um, is saying, touchy feely whatever the husband's name is my least favorite, yada yada yada. And like it, she's really the less likable of the two in this parental unit. And so I can see like where Lexi got her, I'm better than everyone type of attitude, but Lexi has been evolving as a result of the events that have been experienced here. So a few days later, over at school, uh, Devin, Lexi, and Jake are talking about Chucky in secret, and Junior interrupts as like, "Have you guys seen Westworld? It's this really cool show." And it's like this is like the second mention of Westworld in this series. It's really weird. But Lexi says, "I haven't had time this week," and so he knows that something is up with the three of them, and she's sort of shut him out because she doesn't think that Junior would believe her about the whole Chucky thing. And when Caroline gets the new doll, the one who says it's called Tommy, Lexi uh wants to look at it, and she like tries breaking it, throwing it around, while the parents are present. It's like this is not a very good plan. It's not very smart. Um, but she figures, okay, the doll didn't react, so it's not Chucky. But they do eventually find the half face melted Chucky and find him in a garbage can, and they get scared by a skunk. But then they end up throwing it around and breaking it and whatever, smashing it, whatever. And so they're like, yeah, we defeated Chucky. And if they feel like so triumphant and whatnot. Oh, and earlier, back at school, Jake and Devin had a moment. There's this tribute thing to Oliver, and Jake feels guilty because he's like, Oliver's dead because of me. So I guess now Devin does know the context of uh, Jake sending Chucky to the party and that leading to Oliver's death. I do kind of wish there were a few more steps of like Devin working through the series of events in his head and reasoning with why he should feel sorry for Jake or why Jake shouldn't feel too bad or whatever. But I think maybe because of how messed up the things Lexi did, where he kind of gets it, maybe. And I mean, Devin also has like the Hack and Slash podcast, so maybe he's able to imagine and put himself in like Jake's shoes and whatnot. But they stand together for a while, and we get the shot of people in the hallway passing by, in sped up motion while they stand still for a while. And after they uh, take care of that Chucky doll, the one with a half melted face, Devin and Jake bike together until dawn. This is probably the weekend, like a Saturday when this happens, because doing this on the morning of a school day, like that would be a nightmare. And they're like overlooking the city from this high point, and they, this is when they share their first kiss together. They feel like there's not a worry in the world, and they can finally be a thing. Uh, and then meanwhile, again, the show focuses on the parents as well. We see that um, Junior's mom, um, Bree, she's having a session with a psychiatrist or therapist and whatnot. And the scene feels very Hannibal. Like it kind of feels like the sessions that Hannibal has with Bedelia in a way. Um, and also the red curtains kind of remind me of Twin Peaks. I kind of wonder if maybe that's an intentional shout out there. And like I said, Don Mancini has worked on a couple episodes of Hannibal, and Hannibal was influenced by Twin Peaks. But Brie, she's been keeping her secret from her family, and I can't remember if she says the secret here that she has, but the illness that she's going through, and she mentions how alone she feels keeping it to herself. So yeah, we got a bit more of info on her, which is nice. And then in the next scene, it's really weird. It has this caption that says Hackensack Hotel present day, but it's right after this scene with Bree. It's not right after one of the 80s flashbacks. So it's like, why was the caption there? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just a different day, like a couple days after something, and that's supposed to signify the passage of time. I don't know. But at the Hackensack Hotel, Tiffany and Nika, who is possessed by Chucky, if you remember back in Cult of Chucky, like Fiona does such a great job channeling Chucky's attitude, like the voice and the mannerisms and the way uh, Chucky walks around. Like, it's very convincing. And they have someone tied up in the room with them whom they intend to kill. But then Tiffany and Chucky get in this argument. Tiffany says she's hungry, and it becomes a whole thing. They yell at each other, and Tiffany leaves the room. But Chucky talks to this tied up person, tells him about being in love, and somehow I think Chucky gets a knife and cuts the guy, and then the blood triggers something where the side of it makes uh, Nika's body revert back to like her normal self, so she can't stand anymore because she's wheelchair bound, but of course doesn't have the wheelchair now at the moment. And so we get Fiona playing Nika again for real, and she asks, "What date is it?" And the guy says, "November 8th." And um, Nika it says, "Oh my gosh, 2 weeks ago, Chucky split his soul and put it in my body." She does this recap of Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, and we see clips from those movies. Chucky killed her family, and then in Cult, at the mental institution, he split his soul and put it in her. And there are issues with the timeline here. Like, she says that it was 2 weeks ago that the events of Cult of Chucky happened. So that would place it in late October and maybe during or between earlier episodes of this season. But if back in Cult of Chucky, the news article about stuff going on at Harrogate was January 2017. And here in this show, we see that October 19th, 2021 is when episode one ends, or, when Jake's dad dies, that happens. Um, and I think I lean more toward thinking that this show takes place 2021, based on what happens in the next couple seasons as well. So I kind of chalk it up to, okay, Nika is disoriented. She's just getting back to Earth and catching up, and maybe she thinks it's just been 2 weeks. Um, but I do think, if it has been over 4 years for her that she's been possessed, I do kind of wonder, why did it take this long for her to break out? Tiffany and Chucky surely would have had killed more people and seen more blood, but maybe it had to be a lot of times before uh, Nika finally makes the breakthrough, emerging onto the surface of her mind or whatever. And I mean, even if it had been only 2 weeks between the film and this episode, like, they had to have killed people then too, right? So I think that does hold water. That either way, uh, Nika, through or Chucky through Nika's eyes would have seen blood, but Nika just hasn't come out of that state in that time, and this is the first instance. Like, maybe it builds up, and after a certain number of times seeing it is when she finally gets out and the spell is broken for a bit. Um, but then um, another thing that kind of messes with the timeline is, if it's 2021, then Halloween would have been on a Sunday. And we see in the second episode that Jake is at school when Oliver invites him to the Halloween party that's later that day. And yeah, Halloween parties can take place a couple days before actual Halloween, but we do see some trick or treating the night of the party, at least from Chucky's part. So my head canon is that okay, Hackensack is a town where maybe there's a weird rule. Maybe the mayor put it in effect that Halloween can only be celebrated on weeknights or something. Or maybe this is a town where Halloween is such a huge deal that trick or treating might happen a couple of days in advance, much like how in real life people set off fireworks even just a couple days before actual 4th of July, which is really annoying. But anyway, Nika thinks that the guy who's tied up believes her, and she tries to untie him, and he, I think, hits her, and that snaps Nika away and brings Chucky back to the surface, and then Tiffany gets back in the room, and Chucky kills the guy so that he can't tell Tiffany about what just happened. Nika coming back. So I think this is an interesting way of bringing people back up to speed. Reminding the longtime viewers about the events of Curse and Cult. But for new viewers who maybe haven't watched the last couple or even last few Chucky movies, maybe it does a decent enough job of letting them know what they missed and the context of Nika. But I kind of don't like how Nika doesn't feel as much like a main character here. Like, I feel like, especially in the first season, there's not enough through her eyes. She was such a main character in Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky that it's a little jarring seeing her be kind of, it feels very much like just a cameo, especially when Chucky is possessing her most of the time in this episode. And yeah, I know this show is meant to be about the kids mainly, but I don't know. Like, I feel like Cobra Kai is an example of a show that does the balance between the legacy characters and the next generation characters very well. So I think there's a bit that maybe could have been done a bit better here. But yeah, but speaking of the kids, Junior is really mad at Jake because Lexi is texting him and he's not in the know about what is even going on. And his dad, Logan, also says that even though Junior missed regionals, he had a talk and with whoever's in charge, and he'll still be going to nationals. And Junior's like, well, isn't that kind of unfair? And there's this friction between um, there's what he wants and there's what his dad wants, in terms of athletics. And so this whole conflict between them is brewing and has been even in the previous episode, like I mentioned. But there's this assembly that happens. Um, I think it's still November 8th, and Junior confronts Lexi, and she basically tells the truth of, oh, the Chucky doll came to life, but we killed him. And Junior feels very insulted. And, from his perspective, who could blame him? Lexi tells a story that does not feel believable and makes it seem like she thinks he's stupid. And you gotta remember, he doesn't know that Lexi has changed much, that she's no longer as mean as she used to be. And I don't know why Junior dated her in the first place when like she was mean, but yeah, it's kind of a confusing thing. But at this assembly, the mayor, Lexi's mom, is talking about the recent accidents, but things are gonna get better, and The principal has a few words, and then the curtains come apart, and we see sitting um, on a chair is the principal. She has her thumbs up, but she's missing her head. She's been beheaded. And the song Heads Will Roll starts playing. And this is such a bop, this song. And so Jake and Devin and Alexi are really confused. Caroline's dad is trying to cover her eyes. Someone in the crowd has their phone out, trying to video record or take pictures or something. Um, and so we get this flashback showing what happened. The half melted face Chucky doll had visited Caroline while she was asleep, and this was before the garbage can thing. And he transferred his soul into the Tommy good guy doll. And so that's why Chucky didn't react when uh, the trio were beating up that half melted face version and breaking that apart. So yeah, he's in a brand new good guy doll body and still doing his thing. And yeah, I thought it was pretty smart that they put that recap of the soul transfer in Cult of Chucky in the middle of this episode so that later at the end of the episode you're like, okay, soul transfer is a thing, and so this is what happened. And so audiences who do not know about the soul splitting thing will know that that's a thing. Although I guess that's not soul splitting there. Like Chucky put his entire soul into the well, not his entire soul because part of it is still in Nika, but and in another doll at least. But you know what I mean. Like he put whatever was of his soul in the half melted face into the new good guy doll. Um, and yeah, so I really wonder what it's like being a viewer who missed out on a couple of the movies and is getting into this and sort of getting brought up to speed on the lore and the soul splitting and the soul transfer. I wonder what that perspective is like. Um, but yeah, this was a good episode overall. Like I mentioned, the whole balance of main characters thing, with Nika and whatnot, is it's a critique I have, but I think this is still a solid episode. Um, Overall, I think I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. So, there have been a couple stronger episodes, in my opinion, or three stronger episodes, I guess, but still good. And tomorrow I'll be back talking about episode 6, which is titled Cape Queer. And we get a couple more familiar faces from the movies in there. So thanks for tuning in to Steve Ashinder Reviews in video form for Chucktober. And I'll see you all next time. Hashtag renew Chucky, hashtag review Chucky, hashtag save Chucky.